smidgen of a change, which I just gave to Casey here under Public Works Supervisors, so she'll just amend what Jay wanted. It just says would, but we don't know what he wanted, so I'm just gonna explain that one.
Moved and seconded to approve minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. With the bills, everybody had a chance to look at that? Don't have any changes or questions, I have a motion to approve.
I move to approve the bills.
Moved by Paul, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by John, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Last item, we have the delinquent note utility bill list. A motion to approve the shut off.
I move to approve the shut-off.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Paul, second by Jason. Is there any other discussion? Nicole?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Yes, for me, motion carried. Next item is, do we have any citizens that would like to address the commission tonight? So everybody's aware, we moved this at the last meeting to move it up further in the meeting. Commissioners and officers, do you want to wait for your reports until after the business? Maybe get through our two reports. Does that sound okay?
Sounds okay to me.
All right, then go on to BDR with Chad.
Just for those of you that don't know Chad, he's with DDR. So he's the one that did all the engineering of our project. So we thank DDR for doing all that work. I'll tell you that all these gentlemen up here at the height, at the top of their professions. They're all supervisors, they're all in charge. So if you have any questions, commissioners, please, they're gonna be able to answer all that, so.
Thanks, everyone. I'm Chad Rasmussen with DGR Engineering, and I'm going to go over electric system study that we've prepared for your community. Have given all the commissioners a bound copy of the report. I'm not intending to go through all the details of that report today, or we'll be here for a few hours. But we have gone through the details with 4.16 kV, or 4,160 volts, 6 circuits in total. 56% of your system is underground, meaning 44% is overhead. And many of those overhead segments are very old. We definitely noticed there's some areas for improvement in what we call sectionalizing. And sectionalizing means when you have a problem in the system, you try to install fuses or breakers to limit the amount of area that's affected when you have a problem, so it doesn't take out large parts of the system. So you need more of that equipment to be installed. Also, it would be helpful to get a lot more backfeed in the system. So if you have a problem, you have ways to tie it to other circuits and reduce the amount of time that you have an outage when you have something fail. This is a map of the distribution system. Again, all these figures are in the back of the report. See the two substations that are the square boxes. Hillsboro on the left, Trail on the bottom, and the 6 different colors for the 6 different circuits throughout the community. I just want to pull this map up. What this distinguishes is the difference between overhead and underground. So the red lines are overhead, and the blue lines are underground. As you can see, it's pretty normal. Most of the outer parts of town are your underground sections, generally the newer parts of the system. Older parts are more in the center part of town.
The red is overhead, the blue are underground.
Correct.
And you said the newer ones are the red?
The newer ones are the blue.
The newer ones are the blue, okay.
Yeah, so most of the newer construction has been done in underground
Okay.
fashion, which is typical.
Does anyone ever move the overhead to underground, or it stays as is?
Pardon me? Say again?
And there we go.
Yeah.
For the overhead, does anyone ever put them underground?
Yes. Yes. And actually, we'll get into that, but it's recommending that we move.
Jump
very
into
lot.
questions.
Great question. Any other questions about the existing system before I move on? Okay, next piece I want to cover is what we call load growth on the system. This chart here shows the dots on the left are history, and the arrows on the right are future. The blue line is what we call winter electric peaks. The red line is summer electric peaks. What you see happening, your summer's been going up. Winter's been holding pretty steady, although this last winter actually shot way up. This graph is out of date. The winter peak actually got above 10 megawatts, meaning that it got all the way up to here this last winter. If you remember what I said, the capacity of those 2 substation transformers was 5 plus 5.6, that's 10.6 megawatts. You got up to a point where you were at full capacity. What happens if we lose one of those transformers? That's a problem.
And the reason that went down was because of natural gas you were suspecting on the winter side,
Okay.
back those years, because we
Sure.
had it natural gas.
Gotcha.
Partially that, partially that.
But gas would help it keep it kind of stable, I'm assuming,
Yeah.
otherwise it would probably have been higher.
It held pretty steady
No,
last summer.
it held pretty steady. We did see some peaks here and there, but that, a lot of it looked like with, when we were, dealing with Anchor. But other than that, it was pretty steady, so, but, yeah, we are like right at our max.
And as we look into the future, so going back 4 years, been growing at about almost 5% growth rate, which is very healthy. When we talked with staff about things were happening in the community, it was not hard to come up with enough potential load additions to the system to, in 10 years, be at like a 6% growth rate in the summertime. more concerned about summertime peaks because electrical equipment, we can overload it a little bit in the wintertime. It's all thermal ratings is what we're concerned about. Heat is what breaks down insulation on that equipment and can cause premature failure. So we're most concerned about winter peaks, although we can only go so much over in some winter. So I don't want to say you can go double or something like that, but we can go a little over. But it's the summertime ones that produce more.
That was one of the reasons during,
I know what yours does, right?
that was one of the reasons during the wintertime when it got up to the 10 megs, it was like probably one of the coldest part of the winter. So that, I was chewing on my nails knowing that it was that high, but luckily it was, the cold weather helped it to maintain. So,
That would have been a perfect example, right?
yeah, exactly.
Okay, so that load growth that I talked about, this map here is figure 7 in the back of the report, but basically what we did was we took that additional load that was projected and we picked out what parts of the community that we thought that load was going to occur with input of staff. And we know about your industrial park, obviously. We've got the water plant, treatment plant that's going to be coming online. A few residential areas around town as well. School addition, so some commercial growth. It was not hard at all to come up with that projected load amount. Okay, next thing I want to talk about is setting up the analysis that we do and talk a little bit about the criteria of design that we use for that. And the first thing in distribution planning is we use what's called a single contingency level of reliability. And basically that's a fancy word for saying if we lose a piece of equipment, any one piece of equipment, we still should be able to back it up. Okay, so if someone drives into a pole, knocks over a line, we should have a way to backfeed that circuit from somewhere else. If a transformer blows up in a substation, we should be able to use the other substation to pick things up. So we use a single contingency level of reliability. When you get into transmission planning, you actually get into like double contingency planning. But at the distribution level, we plan on one thing out at a time. Okay, we also want to maintain good voltage service to all customers, both under normal or emergency conditions. So the voltage isn't within allowable limits, things aren't going to work right, and the equipment or stuff's just not going to work. So we want to maintain good voltage service. We also do not want to overload equipment under normal or emergency conditions. Again, overloading equipment is what causes that equipment to fail. Large utilities like Excel may run things a little different where they've got a lot of inventory, let's say. A municipal like yourself doesn't have a lot of equipment on standby that they can just slap in if something overloads. So we want to make sure that we're designing the system to not be overloading equipment and causing premature failure. Flexibility in operations, and this really comes down to, when there's problems on the system, the guy shouldn't have to work to do 20 switching operations to get the circuit back in service. There should be a reasonable amount of capability in the system for it to be flexible in operation and to get the customers back on quickly. And last, we want to set up a system that's expandable to accommodate low growth in an orderly way. When you get that new, potential customer coming to town, you don't want to have to tell them, sorry, it's going to be 5 years till we can feed you, I guess. So you want the system set up in a way that you can accommodate low growth within reason. You can't expect it. You don't want to overbuild the system to have way too much capacity, but you want enough to be able to bring your customers in. Any questions on that design criteria?
Just a quick comment on the, where you was talking about good voltage service to all customers and stuff like that. Just know that whenever there's a criteria that we have to follow, or we get fined for not following that certain criteria, having keeping people at a certain rate, that voltage. And if you fall way below a certain number, I'm not sure exactly the number, Jack probably did better than I could, but I know that the city will have to pay. There's a fine, penalty. So just that to keep in mind when we're talking about stuff like that. When it's good, we're good. But when it's bouncing around a lot and it's going down to certain criteria that it's supposed to be at, then yeah, the city has to pay. So just keep that in mind.
Okay, so we'll talk next about the system analysis that we performed. We did what's called load flow modeling, and basically it's a fancy word for saying we built a computer model of your system to represent what happens in real time, I guess. We use mapping information, metering information, and a program called MillSoft Windmill to create a computer model of the electric system. With that, we can perform voltage and capacity analysis of your system, and then actually go through and simulate fault conditions, and do those things that I mentioned. Take this circuit out of service, backfeed it, take this transformer out of service, backfeed it. What happens on the system? What's the voltage on the end of the line? Are we seeing any overloaded conductors, etc.? And then also, we're doing that for today's loads, but that load growth that we talked about, we apply that to the model as well, and we go through and do all that analysis for future loading conditions. We also look at equipment age and condition and take that into consideration as we're thinking about improvements to the system. And obviously gathered input from operating personnel to understand where they see pinch points on the system or trouble areas. And again, the back of the report behind Appendix 8, there's a bunch of pages showing the results of different modeling scenarios. Not going to go through those. I'm just going to summarize what we found. But basically, when you see red, it means that the voltage is outside of our planning criteria for it's called low voltage. And when you see green, it means you're outside of our planning criteria for capacity. So if things are black, it means they're okay, they're good. But if they're showing up red or green, it means that there's some problems on the system. In each of those sheets, the system configuration is shown on the right, how the circuits are configured, and on the left is the results of analysis graphically. And then you can see in tabular format as well there, the amps on each circuit, where we are in problems is shown in green, and the voltage at the end of the line, if it's showing up in red, it means there's low voltage. So this happens to be actually system intact during the winter peak. We do have some areas that are over 80% capacity. Doesn't mean they're overloaded yet, but they're approaching that. And then red means that they're low voltage on the system. This is a different scenario. It's like we lost feeder 1. In the lower right, it shows how the system is configured again and which switches that we open or close to make that configuration work. In this case, we had overloaded lines well in excess of their rating, and then voltage that was really problematic in that scenario. So again, if you'd like to get into all the details, happy to do that, but in the essence of time here, I'm just going to kind of summarize things. Really, the crux of it is the existing 4.16 kV distribution system has reached its limits. For a community of your size and the load that you have, it's really time for a voltage conversion. There's 4 voltage conditions and circuit overloading issues under various system intact and outage conditions. The loss of either substation is especially problematic. So, knock on wood as I'm saying that, I hope that never happens to you folks, but you do have a situation where your load is going to exceed the available capacity in your substation. You lose one of those substation transformers today. You could run the generators to try to unload that remaining transformer, but that's very expensive to do. And depending on when it happens, it may still not be enough.
And that really concerned me talking with Roy, that we don't have that capability as well as we'd like. So it's pretty crucial in order to keep section, correct me if I'm wrong here, in order to keep sections, you know, if you have one section go down, if you can't connect to it some way, you're,
With the storm, he pretty much had to run one feeder at a time, because it just, you can't. The more heavily you break this piece out and come in like that, you guys really can't do that.
our options are very limited. So it's concerning.
Question back here?
Yeah, on these older sections, the lines that are up and above and everything, a lot of those lines have trees growing through them and everything, and power lines, and then they have the old I think Nordac was the power line that did it before. They have the old transformers up on the pole that, you know, like you said, they're not really, coated on any of the wires, and there's a lot of wires up there that are broken off and just hanging. I don't see what the people are doing on some of these poles. And then you're talking about an underground line to replace these, right? With all the root systems and everything underneath the trees and everything, that would become a, you know, a portion of the, a problem, you know, unless you basically get rid of all the trees.
No, we can install power lines around trees.
Yeah, but you got all these trees in different settings, and the power line's gonna be going like a snake.
We can get under pretty good, actually.
You can bore
Yep.
through all that stuff,
Yep.
so that's not a concern, the boring.
Right. Yep, no,
With that,
we're able to do, the
Most of the
construction
tree
techniques we
roots,
have.
most of the roots on the trees are not that deep. And you go in at 4 feet with your electrical underneath, as long as you're not boring dead center under that tree with the tap root, you're okay.
No, like I said, Nordac, I'm looking at the map, my home's in where all that red portion is, and, you know, looking at the last storm that pulled down a tree, 35, 40-foot tree and everything, you know, knocked down on the lines and everything, but luckily it didn't break it. I've had Midco out, because Midco runs their lines up, on the power line there. And, they're sending out more people to repair the brackets that broke off from that last storm we had, on the 20th, you know, of this month. And he said, looking up at the transformer, it's just really, you know, there's just wires hanging that he doesn't know what they're even doing there, because they're just dangling, you know, in the system.
If it's just dangling, more than likely, they might be de-energized then, because,
For what?
I said, if it's probably just dangling, it might be de-energized, because otherwise it'd be arcing,
A transformer on a pole?
maybe,
Okay.
you know, it could be, I don't know exactly where, but it sounds to me like if there's any kind of dangling wires around there,
Well, there's also wires cut down near the bottom of the pole.
Why don't we, let's talk about it after the meeting with Roy.
Okay.
Good question. Okay, so let's talk about improvements to the system. So basically, what we did is, knowing those vulnerabilities and problems on the system, we came up with a plan to basically take care of them. And we tried to prioritize what we felt were the most important things to get done first. If we could wave a wand and do all of them at once, we'd love to do that, but we realize that's not realistic. So we've broken this out into 4 different phases of work. And so you can take off in chunks, basically. So this first phase here, we want to get started with the voltage conversion on the east side of the community. The clouded areas there are the areas that we'd be looking to upgrade from 4.16 kV to 12.5 kV out on the distribution system. numbers are intended to be budgetary. They do include all materials, assumed contractor installed labor, as well as include, as if you'd be fully engineering the project, hiring contractors to build it, and do include contingencies as well. So, um, so they're intended to be budgetary type figures. And they are today's value. You know, obviously, as inflation occurs over the next several years, we do not account for potential inflation in these values. We're presently showing phase one being completed 2026 to 2028. Okay, so sorry about that. Okay, phase two. Phase two is shown in green on this map. So phase one was red, phase two is green. This one's a little harder to see because it blends into the background. But in phase two, we're showing a new substation being constructed. This one would be rated just 12.5 kV on the low side. We're showing it kind of in the southwest corner, just east of the interstate. It doesn't have to be in that exact location necessarily. We'd like it to be close to the transmission line if we can, because we then don't have to build transmission to that substation. That's just another added cost. We've talked about building on the west side of the interstate possibly, which we could do, but then we'd have to build a tap across the interstate transmission. In addition, we're showing the downtown area getting converted from 4.16 kV to 12.5 kV in this phase also. That substation, about a $5 million project. The downtown voltage conversion, about 2.3 million, and then we had some ties as part of this project as well to improve that sectionalizing on the system. Total of phase two, about 7.7 million, and we're showing that in 2029 to 2031. Any questions so far?
So with that substation, if we lost the other sub, we would build a run with town on that, depending on the growth.
We would build that large enough to handle the full capacity of the community. Good question. Okay, phase three, and this is
As you do the expansion, then, are you also planning on putting all the overhead underground? Or is
yes.
that-
So every time that we are doing one of those clouds, we're burying those lines. So as we're converting voltage, we're not going to go back in the air with overhead transformers. We're going to put in pad mount transformers and basically convert those overhead power lines to underground. That's the cost that we've included in the budget figures here. Good question. So phase three is shown in blue on this one. Again, we're continuing with more voltage conversion. This time on the west side of the interstate, we're going to convert the rest of that area to 12.5. We're going to take that step-up transformer that was on the west side of the interstate and actually move it to the trail substation. We're going to repurpose that to be able to run generation, because your generators are at 4.16 kV. So when we convert trail to 12.5, we got to be able to still connect to those generators. We're also doing more voltage conversion on the east side of the interstate as well. Basically in those clouded areas in light blue there. Phase three, about 1.8 million of voltage conversion. I didn't mention we're also building a new circuit, new mainline circuit out to the water treatment plant area to get a backup 12.5 circuit to that part of the system. Expectation is we're going to be getting more load in the industrial park, during these times as well. So that mainline water treatment plant tie, about 500,000, and then the northeast voltage conversion, about 3.85 million, for a total phase three of 6.16 million.
advantages, of course, to that.
Yeah, so the big advantage is that for the same amount of power that we're sending to a customer, it takes 1/3 of the current on the line. Okay, so if before it was using 100 amps, now I only need 33 amps.
I think that's important, because that's the first thing that question I had, was how is that going to make a difference if we have the same lines? And
Yep.
from a layman, it's like, okay, well, that makes sense.
Yep. So a lot of the power cable on your system, we can actually reuse. It doesn't mean we have to replace all the cable on your system. If 15 kV cable is installed, which most of it is, the underground, we can reuse that cable. It's the transformers that we have to replace. And if there's existing service lines that are underground and that are in good shape, we can reuse those as well. So a lot of that cost is just in the transformers, distribution transformers at the facilities.
We look at when we're going underground, a lot of these things. We're gonna keep those overhead, or are we going to plan to go underground as well?
So we budgeted to bury those services. That can kind of become a, I don't know what your policy is for that, and who owns the service and that type of thing, but what we found is when communities do voltage conversion, the best way to do it is just to bury all those services. And the community usually takes care of that, and then even if they do own the service, you turn it over to them at that point. That way it just all gets done. It's not the same time.
I just wanted to make sure that was the plan, Dan, is going on.
Yep, it is.
open loop and make it closed loop? Or once it's already in, it's in, so?
No, you can. So we're talking about like on the transmission system. You can, it does take quite a bit of investment
A bit
to
more.
make that happen. That would kind of be on Excel as an overhead transmission system.
Gotcha. Okay.
Moorhead has a closed transmission system.
Yeah, I don't know why we,
But they own
oh, okay. Gotcha.
Okay, that's all I have.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for your
Thank you,
time.
Chad, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank
Yes,
you.
thank you.
And if there's additional questions or what have you, happy to reach out to us anytime and. Yeah.
If we do nothing, how long before something happens?
Is this on the record?
If you didn't hear Eric, he said tomorrow.
You're at the end. You have, you do something or you pay to leave it. If these loads do come to town, you're going to be able to serve them. And other people will serve them. And you'll lose that electric bill. That's where you're at.
And if you can't read his, he's the electric operations manager at Moorhead, so that's why he's been up helping us and Roy a lot. So he's been around the system now for a while here. So he's seen a lot of it, he's worked on it with Roy. So the short time he's been here, he's got to experience a lot of things. So I take his, when he says something to heart, because he, like I said, these guys are, he's been there, he's thinking about retirement in about 10 years, so.
10 years.
Just
I
a
started in Benson, Minnesota, and it was very similar to where you guys are now. And they were not doing a lot of investing into it. MRES, after I left, ended up coming in, taking it over, and has invested in that community. And it has done wonders for that community down there. Had they not done the upgrades and stuff, they would not have the load that they have now. So,
And this is not unique to Hillsboro, this conversion.
No, this is not unique to you at all.
We may even be behind you.
You might be on the tail end, put it that way.
Of communities that have already done it.
Your size. Yeah, done lots of voltage conversion. Benson, what was Bowman involved in as well. So it's, no, this is a process. This is a normal process to go through. It's just that you maybe let it slip a little longer than some of the communities have. Put it that way. And I don't want to curse your system, so don't hold that against you. But I've seen a lot of 30 to 40-year-old transformers fail in my time. So that's what could happen, and then you really, tough spot. A new transformer to order today, it takes 2.5, 3.5 years to get for a substation transformer. You might be able to find something on the used market. Maybe. So, again, I don't want anything bad to happen, but that could happen.
Just an example of how fast the load can go up, there's a company here that recently approached us and they wanted to add 3/4 of a meg to their system, like, right now. So it's like, I had to call, these guys to see where we're at on their model, because that going on at the same time as the new water plant is trying to come in at the same time, those are the things that the kind of issues and problems that we're running into. Because they're not just coming in, they're using up a lot of load, so we have to be prepared to be able to service them, what they need. So with the water plant coming in at the same time, and then Anchor asking for, for what they're looking for at the same time, it's one of those things where we really have to, otherwise, we have to start telling them no. And that's not going to go away.
And with that being said, being on the economic development side so long in Hillsboro, that's another thing that concerns me, is because if that company comes in and they need X amount of electricity and we can't supply it, they're gonna say, well, it was nice talking to you, we're gonna go to Castle, we're gonna go to Mayor. You know, so those are things that we also, those are other things besides the urgency of it. Those are other things that can prevent the growth of the city. And as everyone knows, the more people, more utility customers we have, the less everybody has to pay. You're splitting that piece of pie amongst a lot of people. So we hate to say, no, don't come. So that's something to also keep in mind, is that we stifle economic growth at the same time if we don't have the capacity.
I visited with MRS this afternoon, talked to both transmission and substation, or and distribution. Used here, there's not a lot of capacity left in the system. Chad noted that earlier tonight. You gotta have some buffer in there so that you can say yes to economic development or the customer wanting to add load. And if you don't, like I said, they're gonna go somewhere else. And it's, the distribution system doesn't have the capacity either. So you've got to do something to help continue forward with growing.
We're kind of getting hit from three different sides. We're trying to grow, you know, from an economic development standpoint, but we're also trying to take care of what we have. Let's say you had 5 people that wanted to put charging stations in your house. You saw what Chad did. You know, and here, you know, that's possibilities. You know, you never know what's going to happen. So we're already at that point where, you know, we have to say no to those things. And we don't want to say no to those things, but they're a reality.
The big one that'll come. Potentially come. Would this system give us enough for a cheese plant?
How many things we talk? I don't know. I mean, if we can plan for that, we can build a new substation for that. Sure. And maybe we put a second, right, and maybe we put a second transformer in right away, if that's gonna happen, for example. Say it's a 5 or 10 megawatt load, then we're gonna approach the project differently.
Because we want another day, but we want another anchor. Right now, you have no chance.
No.
You have no chance. And I know other places that will build a sub for them and supply the power to them, and we will not be the ones supplying the power and getting the electric revenue from that. We will lose your electric revenue to someone else.
Yeah, if we were to build a new sub, we would build it with space to expand it as well, right off the bat. Put room in for that second transformer right away. So if something big happens, you can support that.
And remember, with this isn't happening tomorrow, we do have, if something comes up in the next year or two, we still have, that's phase 2, so we can adjust as we need in the next few years.
I think Chad's game plan is to fix the existing system and some feeders as needed. But at the end of the day, if something comes to town, you're gonna have to think about it just to get that going.
And they did the best, that's when they asked the question about, you know, we don't know when school is going to happen, we don't know what other things, but the potential is there, so they try to build that in right away. In the development, you know, over there on the industrial side there, you know, they built that in because those are areas that we've heard people talking about potential growth, so we built those in right away.
Nope, I'm good.
I'm good.
Good.
Thank you, Chad, and to all the
Yes,
work that
thank
you
you.
guys did for helping us put this together. Set that language in order for them.
And this is really good stuff.
Yeah, you're welcome, appreciate the opportunity.
Next, I'll turn it over to Ken Miller with MRES to talk about our rates.
those who don't know, Jim, he's the director of rates at Missouri River Energy Services. This is what he does for a living, and he again is at the top of his game, so he knows numbers. So if you have any questions, if he can't answer them, probably nobody can answer them.
Ironically, I was in Benson 2 weeks ago when you said that. You're probably improving the rates right now, but it's good to be here in Hillsboro, and she's just pulling up my slides here, and we'll get rolling. Our last study was in 2007. That's the first study we did for Hillsboro, so it's been a while. I've been in contact with past staff with various questions. I talk to Jim every couple of years about various things, but obviously I haven't been able to get back up here for a study till now, so we really appreciate getting up here. And obviously the needs there with some of the improvements in here, so I want to make That is a new proposed class that we're looking at, and I've indicated that's over 50 kilowatts, just to give you an idea of what that means. Is that be the size of a convenience store? We've got a couple of those in town, courthouse, a couple of the larger churches are right around that average of 50 kilowatts. So that's kind of the threshold. Anyone larger than that would be in this new proposed class, and they would get a demand rating, and we'll explain what that means here in a little bit, but that would be the large commercial class. Those customers will only make up about 24 meters, 24 customers.
that as like a graph, is, okay, we're paying here, and then we go up, and we go down? Shouldn't that be what the customers,
Yeah.
shouldn't that kind of follow that? That's how I look at it. So if we're paying more, they're in the on-peak, and if we're paying less, they're...
Yeah, I mean, there's two elements. There's the seasonal demand rates, which is kind of the rate you play for the demand in that month. And then there's this aspect, which is time of use, which is down the road, we kind of collect those costs. But right now, we do want to collect those seasonal demand costs, rates. And you'll see those rates here in a couple of weeks. So, these are your power costs. If you kind of, yep, there we go. Kind of peaked there a few years back when WAP and MRS had some increases. And then your costs have decreased to about 5.4 cents here the last few years, but you can see in the future, you are going to see a steady increase in those purchase power costs. Again, MRS is very competitive rates. WAP has extremely competitive rates, but they are going up just to reflect the generation facilities we're trying to look at, and just all the factors going on. So, these are going up over time. We're competitive, but as Travis indicated, all the wholesale suppliers are going at the same time. So. All right, we've kind of covered these already. These are the amounts from the DGR study that you just saw, so those are just for your reference if you want to keep going here. The next slide, though, is the financing. And so talking with staff, we kind of talked this through how this might look. We're thinking phase one might be the Bank of North Dakota loan. The good news with that is that we're able to spread that out over 30 years, and the interest rate is lower. So that's really a good financing source. We have included the debt service reserve, so basically they often require you to set 1 year principal and interest aside in a savings kind of restricted account. That's for your protection really and theirs, so that if something catastrophic happens, there's that 1 year payment saver that you can use if you need to. The annual debt service is $263. This does not include that potential grant. I understand you might be finding out about that soon.
End of the month.
End of the month. So we just decided to kind of move ahead with the study. I think if that grant does occur, what you're going to be able to do obviously is issue less debt now, and then you have more capacity for debt going forward. So I don't think it necessarily affects the rate plan. You would just be further ahead on the financials if that occurs. So let's hope that that occurs, but that's one of many things that can happen with this plan. We're kind of doing the best we can. We know there's going to be changes. We know that things will evolve, but we're always ready to help if those changes occur. But
Saying if we did get the grant, we should be, whether it's 30% or 40% of our revenue should be going aside to pay for this plus reserves for the future.
definitely still set aside those revenues to pay for it. Yeah. In essence, what would occur if you get the grant is you probably have about $500,000 more in cash by 2030, just because your debt service on phase one would be lower. So then you can use that extra amount to put a bigger down payment on phase two. So that's essentially what you have. So either way, the money's going to be used. It's just that you'll be able to use it on phase two.
And not pay as much in interest.
Yeah.
Hey, Tim, just to clarify, our generation revenue is included in these numbers too, right?
It
To
is
be set
included in your
aside.
revenues, yep. And
Yep.
you'll see that here in just a minute, yep, that is in there, so. Phase two, we did assume, you'll see in the projections, that we think you're gonna be able to use $1 million of cash reserves at that point to pay part of that. Plus, if you get the grant, you might pay even more. So that'd be good news too. We'll see how everything, happens, but I think that would be good news, again, to not have to bond for everything in that phase. We have assumed traditional bonding here. I understand you might have some more Bank of North Dakota borrowing ability by that point. We didn't want to assume that. If you do have more under that program, the debt service will be lower. But we have assumed the traditional bonding. Again, we don't know what interest rates are going to be. Again, a lot of unknowns here. We're trying to do our best with assumptions. But that would be an additional amount that would be in debt service. And then other thing we wanted to mention when we looked at net income is this debt service coverage ratio. We want to have enough income to pay at least 125% of the principal interest. Again, that's a good financial metric. We'd love to see it higher, and actually we will be higher than that. But just to kind of keep that in mind, that not only do you want some cash reserves, but you want a steady income stream to make sure you can pay that debt going forward. again, that's very much what you want to avoid, you're trying to plan ahead and have more cash reserves. The blue line would indicate what would happen if you do the increases, and you see that kind of dip in that last year, that's where we assumed about $1 million would be taken from reserves and cash flows in that year. So you have a small bit down payment on this. So whether you do exactly $1 million, that's something you can decide in the future. We're just trying to model it, it's not going to try to have that option available if you need to pay down that debt a little bit. kind of important with rate design. What we're looking at doing, if you look at, there's three major customer classes, there's three major cost types. And currently, you've only got really two rate types. You've got a customer charge that everyone pays, and then an energy rate. What we're proposing to do for large commercial customers is break this out into a three-part rate. So we're taking those very significant demand costs and putting them in a separate charge. So I think the important thing to look at here is that all customers are still going to be paying demand-related costs. It's just that they're going to be split out for large commercial into a separate charge, so it's more transparent and more accurate for how they're paid. So when we look at the costs of providing service, we compare those to revenues, do a bunch of allocations. This is what we came up with in terms of the impacts by customer class. You can see overall there's a 54% increase over 5 years. Residential and large commercial are right at that level. Small commercial customers are seeing a bigger percentage increase based on cost of service. And I think you'll see that showing up in the rate comparisons as well. And then rural heat had a pretty significant increase a couple of years ago, and we're showing only a 13% increase for that. So this is kind of the guideline we use for proposed rates. We don't follow this exactly, but this is kind of the benchmark we use to kind of say, okay, how should we allocate these rate increases to the customers? As far as proposed percentage increases then, again, we're assuming 9% increases over the next 5 years. Residential should get right around that 9%. So again, they're going to see about that same level overall as the system. Kind of the same for large commercial, they'll get you some movement over 9% per year. Dual heat would only get about 1% per year, and then small commercial right around 10 to 11%. So not huge changes, but again, we want to better represent the cost of serving customers in the rates that we're showing. Again, we'll see these rates here in the next few slides. Customer charges, again, very important aspect. There's a lot of fixed costs providing service. There's debt service coming on, and so I think it's more critical than ever to have significant cost recovery in these customer charges, make sure that all customers are paying a share of these fixed costs. And so you can see by 2030, that amount would be $30. You can see breakdown there of how that would be allocated to each billing, meter system, and facility as well. Seasonal rates, we touched on these, and so basically your costs are about 1.2 cents higher in the summer than the other 9 months. And so up till now, you haven't reflected that in the rates that have been pointed out. You're kind of losing some money on the summer, gaining a little more in the winter. Nearly all of our members have implemented seasonal rates at this point. The only ones that haven't, really because of their WAPA structure and so on, they really don't see a significant difference in their cost between summer and winter. But for anyone like Hillsboro that does have a cost difference, they have gone to seasonal rates. And again, this all occurred since the last rate setting. The last rate setting was in 2007. We didn't have seasonal rates then, so this is something new since then. The silver lining here is that what you add to the summer rates, you take away from the winter. So the winter rates will be a little more competitive for electricity customers, those who still have electricity. So that's always a benefit. We're not doing it necessarily because of that, but that is kind of the side benefit of this as well. Demand charges is a complicated topic. We've reviewed this with staff. We've come up with a proposal of a threshold of 50 kilowatts. Certainly some utilities have a lower threshold than 50 kilowatts, but we thought that was a good place to start, at least for now. This could be optional for customers over 25. There are some customers that would actually benefit being on the demand rate just because of their low profile. So that could be something down the road you can optimize it with that option for them, but that's something we can work through over time. These two are very common in the industry. Nearly all members have that. The only members of have been historically quite a bit above that. That's not uncommon for other utilities in this area, but in looking at trying to reallocate those to maybe some other funding sources in the city, I think that is a positive development so that you can pay some investor-owned also pay taxes that are coming out about 5%.
So with that being said, right now, we do know how to do transfers, that in 30 years, you would probably be back to have that potential to do that again?
Possibly,
Or
yeah.
whenever you pay out your debts.
Well, I think once the cash flow is built up, yeah, you probably could go back and do it. Get money.
If you need to. So the reason I'm saying that is because the reality is that that's the good part about having our own power, is that when this is paid off, in reality, we want to have money set aside so that in 60 years or 30 years, I should say, that this is going to happen again, or you may have to upgrade it, you'll have the reserve there instead of, always putting it aside. If we didn't have that, we didn't have our own electric, we wouldn't have that capability, whether it be 30, 40, 50 years down. We would never have those reserves for our budget or anything.
But I think how we have to think of it as the smaller city utilities, not our water or our sewer lift stations, those should be paying for themselves out of those rates.
Yeah.
It should be the shared use type facility, like this building or city hall or the city shop, not,
Those rates
not
should-
100, or not 100,000.
Well, that would be more, 108,000 would be more
are customers that are open many hours a day, they've got lighting loads, they've got steady usage throughout the month. So that's kind of the setup for this graph. You can see Hillsboro is the fourth lowest here. Once again, kind of at that middle third of the chart, similar to residential. The median is 8% higher. So that's really something I want to emphasize. You're not starting out as high as the chart right here. You're starting out pretty competitive. That's a good place to be when you're looking at, unfortunately, some increases, but you're still looking okay here, at least in the initial years. And again, all these utilities are going to be moving up over time. Nearly all of them are going to have some sort of increases going forward. So this is not going to be a static chart. Everything's going to be moving to the right over time. So if I do this in 5 years, we'll all be higher. So the last chart then is another large commercial customer. This is maybe more of a manufacturing customer with welding loads, which tend to be a little more intermediate. And so you can see there again, you're the third lowest, and the median there at the bottom is 25% higher. So again, a lot of other utilities, if they have demand charges, would charge more for this type of customer than Hillsboro is. So these are all things we want to do in the rate study: rebalance rates, try to get you to where you need. So to summarize, first I want to say a big thank you to Casey. I asked for a lot of data, and especially these last 6 weeks, and she really stepped up and did a super job of getting that to me so that we could get to this point. So really appreciate all your help on that. Thanks to Paul and Roy and Lena and all their input as well. So it really took a lot to get here, but I appreciate the opportunity to present this. We're looking at rate increases over the next 5 years. This plan is going to change. I'm pretty confident you're going to need these 9% increases, but the details are going to change over time. And we're very happy to assist in the coming years. The study spreadsheets are all set up. We can easily dive into these numbers if we need to. But I don't think that should stop you from looking at the rate increases, at least the next few years, to kind of get you where you need to be. It's going to reflect first power costs. Again, we're going to fund these important projects. And I think the other thing is we want to get you in place so that those last phases you're kind of all situated to continue to grind going forward. Hopefully get some load growth. Hopefully see some positive things for you. So with that, again, thanks. If you got any other questions, we'll be happy to help you. I would say for you guys, every 3 to 4 years would be great, just because I know there's some things that are going to change over time. And that's simply what utilities are going to do. So yeah, I definitely want to look at that. But that shouldn't stop you from calling earlier if something changes. We can certainly help you in the meantime. But yeah, full special. Yeah.
probably remember, we first met on this, not this year in June, but June 3rd of last year, when the process started. So it's been a very long coming, but like you said, there's a lot of data in case you had to get. So there was a lot of meetings put into this. The first meeting we had Eric and Travis, we even had Mel and Jim. Mel Nagel was on that meeting, so we had a lot of people that when we first met to start this process, and every one of them echoed the same thing, the urgency of it, and I can't thank you guys enough for bringing this up to us and kind of putting a bright light on it, so to speak, because we knew we were getting there, and now we got the numbers to show it, so and everything to prove it. So I just can't thank you guys enough for all you do for us.
Thank you, guys. If there's no other questions, free to go unless you want to stick around. They will take some of it.
We're leaving too? It's like, out.
Eric, thank you for coming.
Sure, those are comfy chairs.
Always looking for the bright side. I like that.
That's right.
Pardon me?
When you did your, working up there, was when you fill a flag in that, dairy farm that you want to put in?
See, this is the gentleman that I sent you his address for. Remember I texted you an address? You said Brian was looking at it? This is the gentleman that had that line over by Storms.
Oh,
Right behind Storms is that last,
He texted you that address.
there's the Nordac, box up there, pole, the wires are coming out, and then there's also wires all the way through, around the pole, because I think,
yeah, I think Brian went and looked at it. I think it was communication.
well, that was Midco, the one wire, because they
Right.
came out and looked at it, and they said the transformer's different from the Midco.
Right. I can go by and look at it tomorrow or something and swing by just to verify, but yeah, we'll look at it.
Yeah.
It's right behind Storms, right?
Yeah, so, and then the neighbor's trees, there's a power line.
So yeah, we've trimmed those trees back before.
Oh, yeah. The power line's right in the middle of the trees now.
Yeah, it grows up fast, yeah. We had a lot of issues getting to that. That's good.
Yeah, because I trimmed my trees too, to that last storm, the big tree went over it and almost
Right.
took out the power line.
Yeah.
And I cut it down, so.
Sure. I'll swing by tomorrow. Bye, guys.
But, Joe, about that, and, my neighbor said that, when that storm came through, the transformer took it, sparked.
Yeah, we'll have to do it.
Yeah, but that's an old Nordic.
Yeah. We'll double check it for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. doing this, and Levi, 'cause I wanted to make sure that we covered everything that they felt was necessary to move forward on this project. And that's why I asked them to do it, to make sure, because I knew that they would have to type it up when I made it anyway, so I figured let's get it ahead of time and have it so that there's no questions. Everybody's had a chance to read, check the wording on it and everything, and so I moved that we do the resolution for the electrical project. That recommendation to DGR moving forward.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Jason, moved by Paul. And so the four key things are those that where it says now therefore be resolved. Anything before that is just information about what the four key things are. Is there any other discussion on the resolution? Any other discussion? And this will help Casey and I when we're trying to find financing for it, when when you get to doing rates, well, we have to come back to this. This is what you guys want to do for our future commission. So that it's there. Is there any other discussion?
Yeah, has anybody, heard anybody, I know we put some dollar amounts, or Paul put some dollar amounts, has anybody complained about that in town? I haven't heard anybody who's put in there in town as much as we did, but.
Surprising, I haven't heard anything from day one to every rate. I have not heard. I've heard more people that probably have said, well, we got good rates. You know, they're basically saying they were good rates, so.
You can see that from what we put forward that we did have the rate compared to what other communities have.
And that, like you said, that helped us because we had, instead of being up on this end, you know, and then going up, you know, we're already down on the low end and now we're going up. And I think the important thing that he mentioned when he left was that those rates are gonna also go up too. So just because theirs aren't gonna stay the same, ours may go up, but theirs will too, so.
If I can say something, electric in our office hasn't been complained about. Sewer, you know, that's had a few comments, especially this year, but not electric. So,
And the other key aspect on this one that I made sure Casey added on was the very last one. That says we'll allocate revenues separate funds so that we are going to start saving for this. And that's day one when we put the rates in. We'll figure out whether it's 30%, 35%. We got to put it away every month within that separate fund so that when it comes time, even if we don't put into play this project, we hold off, we start in 2027, well, now we've built that up, we can pay that off right away.
Right now your generation fund is in its own separate fund, so that's kind of a nice starting point too, if you ever wanna look at that. So,
And that's kind of what I suggested too, is just save of it or something, but.
Yep.
And that generation fund, that's what we get those payments for reserve or every month for. Is there any other discussion?
I just am glad that everybody's on board with it. And we're hoping, just to kind of spin off what he said, we're hoping to maybe potentially bid this already this fall. Right? That's the timeline.
That's what we had discussed in that meeting with everybody that one day, and on our whiteboard.
And then we're
notes.
probably still there, so.
It is, yeah.
But that means that we've got to get those things into play. We'll have some issues as we learned this year, we should have applied for the loan for the bank for equipment. Now that's here, so we have to make sure that we are in that. But maybe that's the legislation that we need to look at, talk to our legislator and say, is there a way to hold it to get those funds, or maybe
That was, I did request his schedule for his other job, and I do have it in my office. So I did let him know that one public works supervisor, was interested, and possibly a few commissioners in looking at that. So I can go get that if you guys would like to look at it. So.
On that one, there's another place where we were planning on hiring another person here the next year, so you guys want to look at potentially a second one, that may be a better option.
That would be my question, is if there's a way with the next budget, obviously you put in for a full-time position, but we don't always get what we want when that final budget comes down. If this is something that's more workable, and we save a bunch of medical benefits and all kinds of benefits, and he's able to work 3/4 time, it's pretty nice help.
And then, I guess, when we looked at the budget and asked the staff what they wanted, and they wanted another person, it's hard to hire. You don't get a part-time person generally, so this would be an opportunity that, I don't know if you guys thought you were a good candidate or not. I thought you guys said that, so, I mean, if you want to offer early and do that, there's probably room in our budget to make it work. We're gonna save it in the end next year.
If there's room, me personally, I'd be interested in, if Public Works is interested, exploring if that's an option.
I think
Well,
they
maybe
were,
numbers.
right?
Right.
I think they
Zach
were.
was.
Yeah, Zach
Zach
was.
And if we have room that we can absorb it for the rest of this year until next year, or, if we figure out when we could afford, maybe we had offer it down the road a little bit further, but, I mean, if we get a position, or if we can get somebody in, that's gonna help those guys. Either way.
Yeah, I think Zach is interested. It was, had given him some time to think about how that would work if it was a 3/4 time, because that person does not need benefits or anything. And so I'd asked him to kind of look at what that would look like from a schedule standpoint, to ensure that Zach gets in, like, his vacation time too and things like that. So I think they're just waiting on a schedule from him to see if that's a workable thing.
Yep, it's in my office right now.
Yeah.
Yep, we just,
That'd be good for the budget too, but he's really good too, so.
So we can work together to try to figure out if it's gonna work,
Yeah.
and then, we'll open up the other one for,
Do you need a motion to reopen it, or?
I don't think so, because it's more of a reminder, or just letting you guys know.
Do-
You want a motion?
the only question would be, do you want me to advertise like I did before? We put it in the paper, we can put it on the radio, and then I put it on Facebook. There,
And I'll see if I can share it and try to spit it out more.
The one other question is, do we need to change because there was a request for the mechanic, but that's not in the job description. And it's hard to, if we're gonna add more in, then we take out, that's the problem with our jobs, that they're so vague. They're not vague, they're very, they do a lot of duties. I just don't know if
Something-
we can afford a mechanic.
unless you word it something, I suppose maybe on the line of preference leaning towards mechanical
Mechanical experience.
experience, mechanical experience would be given. I understand every time you got to do a job description for that, you gotta change.
I mean, I read the position description and I thought it pretty encompassed everything. Like, she had some preferred and, would like to look at.
That was the only question I had, I couldn't remember. But I
Yeah,
think that
it was on the right-hand side of the advertisement. I remember that.
All right. Well, then we'll go into commission reports, we're gonna do it tonight, because I have a lot. Paul gets cut off, you know.
Yeah, I was gonna say that anyway.
Are we using the 5-minute time limit or something like that?
I was gonna fork it on.
So we have Paul, I believe, is gonna go on the 30th, and Roy had expressed interest to go to the
is that something that they, since it's something Anchor wants, do we request, I mean, write that grant, or is it something they do?
Municipality is the grant is for, it's the same one that we were gonna apply for last year.
Okay,
It is.
okay, okay.
We weren't, we didn't make the cut, we didn't make the cut this year. It's a city of 1,500 or less that can apply for the road portion of it, but we can't apply for the, infrastructure. part of it.
Infrastructure,
So the
okay.
electrical, water, sewer. So that's the first one. Second one is the flex funding that, is there for the roads that was available. And I also reached out to Anchor and gave them enough info on it, so potentially we could do group project or work with them to improve the road to Anchor. So, and there was several plans, that was a task order that Stephen did for us a while back. There's 3 different things, up to 2 million, but there's 350,000 for that project as well that could be used in the flex funds for DOT. So I request that we look at applying for that. Both of these, would be interesting, Abby with the US Office again. So she said she was willing. The third grant that, we'd like to apply for is there's North Dakota Tree Grant. And that is for 1-for-1. With the, emerald ash borer that is coming in, and they will allow us to take out one ash tree and replace it with one ash tree, up to $25,000. There's not a matching grant, but we'd like to apply for that one as well. You guys mentioned that, that'll help, we can maybe take out some of the thorn trees that are ash. And to be on the boulevard or above properties, I did reach out to the school, they have 10 trees that we can pull on their boulevards, and they are willing to do that one for one there.
You know how many ash trees are downtown on the boulevard?
80%. If you were really curious, if you go onto our website, under city services, there's a Hillsboro tree inventory, and you can look at the tip. It's through the Forest Service, but you can actually look at it, and you'll see every tree that they did the study on 2 years ago. So that's the Forest Service grant. All right, those are the 3 grants. So I'd entertain a motion. You guys agree to apply for those.
How much money would we have to come up for to finish those projects, and where would it come out of if we did?
The flex fund, we could bond, we could also use this municipal infrastructure fund. The infrastructure, we could take that out of electrical anyways, so it's just saving us money. We have to pay for the project, we're just getting money that will pay for it. And with the flex funding, my hope is that I can ask Anchor if they're willing to help put in the project. If they want to do the pavement past where the access is to Riverwalk, maybe that will help get to that portion. Before we submit it, I make sure you guys know the numbers. I just want approval so that I can get happy to work on it and get working on Anchor.
Preliminary cost of it, or
We got a number. I would assume it's probably going to be very similar to last time, which is anywhere from 2 to 6.
I think 4 was the last one she did. That was the big one for the electric. That was that how many pages long one.
Yeah. Have a motion or any other questions?
move to apply for those grants.
3 grants. Is there a fire department needed okay to sign off on paperwork that JR has looked at it, this is the easement agreement. And that those come forward, so it's allowing us to sign off on it.
I'll make a motion.
Jason makes a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second by John, any other discussion? Paul? Yes. John?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Yes. The DOT did sign off on the easement for the access for the proposed plan. They will give the permit in hand, I already signed off on it for it, for the fire department. As soon as the contractor has selected, and then they show that they have insurance for it. So that part of it is done. The last thing I have is a water agreement. Central, I got a phone call from Neil today. We're applying in we have the first agreement that we are allowing them access to use the land. This agreement, this motion that you guys would make tonight, instead of putting it in the next big packet of agreement, basically you guys would make a motion to allow them to use our excess water instead of selling raw water. So they would use our existing wells, they're not gonna add any wells in. They would tie it to our system, track it for water, same as we buy water from them. So, but it's just allowing them to use our excess permanent amount of water. I did talk to Nicole about it, she understood. If at any point we need that water, they know that. But it's mostly for them until they get a new line coming up from their wells where we get our other raw water.
And that's clearly in the agreement, JR? That's clear in the agreement that
It's just the one I
Just
saw
access.
forever ago, right? Or we've had it for a while.
Yep, it's not going to be in that agreement. Before in the agreement, we talked about having them build wells, and those, we're not gonna do that, we're just saying, we're agreeing, we're stating in a motion that we will allow them to use our excess water that we have permits for that we're not using.
And that we can
Mhm.
take
We're
that
gonna
back at
sell
any
it
point.
basically per gallon or however it's 100. So when their treatment plant comes up, they don't have those lines in, they would be able to tie into our water and meter it, and they would filter it and sell it at their, whether it's, I don't know, 9 cents or 4 cents, or whatever we pay right now for raw water. Instead of putting in easements and all this other agreements and stuff, this is a simpler way to get this portion done. We still have to sign off on the bigger agreement of what we're going to do.
Right.
But the motion should be made that we are allowing East Central to use our excess water treatment, water from the Hillsboro aquifers. And at any time we need that water, they understand that we would take that back over, whatever we're not. Because if we get, say, 100,000 cubic acre feet of it, and they're gonna use 90 of it, we need 5, well, then we're okay, but if we need to go up to 50, then they know that they will have to drop down. We always get first access.
And this isn't gonna affect our bargaining powers with the rest of the agreement?
There's still a lot of other stuff in that agreement.
I know they were playing, they had a vision on what the electric should cost them, and I don't want us to do all these favors for them, and then we get down to the end of the thing, and all of a sudden they're like, we appreciate you helping us while we're building, but we're gonna go with these guys.
They can't do that on the electric. So, we already let them know, I let them know what, we actually gave them a little bit ahead of what this was, so that they knew that this is, we can't operate at this point. So,
You guys should have gotten the email, today with, salary, with that salary spreadsheet. Nicole had asked that I would send that out, so I did that today. That's a suggested starting point for whatever, so there's no rhythm and rhyme behind it outside of what I know other cities kind of do as far as adding in a COLA and then adding in a longevity percentage, what have you, whatever you want to call it. So, use it as a tool, and if you guys want to talk more about it, have suggestions, I'm, very happy to get together, so. But yeah, it's ultimately up to you guys on how you want to handle it, so.
That's just a guideline. When we put the budget together, we're looking with the math. So we can move around in there, but I mean, the total dollars. If you want to keep the budget the way it is, then you guys can look at. You don't want to go up, cutting the areas around, or bring others down, or however you want to do it. And that ultimately will make the budget a little bit more.
Something to discuss next meeting, or?
I was gonna say during our budget hearing, we might give it time to digest it. During our budget hearing, is that
One of the meetings in September. Yep.
So I did review it. I would just say to think about one thing of, and I'm not sure if it's in the handbook or not, I don't recall it, but if somebody's in their probationary period and they get their increase after their probation, do you want to see where they also get an increase as well, like the rest of the staff? Or is it they get their increase after their probation and then following year? So for example, Casey got hired and she got her increase after probation. She did not get any of those increases. And so now this year. And so just for consistency or whatever, just something to think about, when you look at the spreadsheet.
I don't think so. If it's, if it's kind of a touchy topic where you guys want a special meeting set up outside of a regular meeting just to talk about that, let me know. I'm happy to check people's schedules. So I know it's kind of a,
Might be more of a time thing.
yeah, it's a discussion topic for sure. So just wanted to let you know that.
not have a executive session on it?
No.
Talk about, other city cut, city cut that one.
Yep, it's gotta be a public meeting. But, if you don't wanna have it during a regular meeting, we can